Thank you, Derek. And before I start, I'd like to thank yourself, Eric, Josh, and the board of directors for the invitation. Just realized that I'm the first guinea pig of the year for Shy Hack Night. So very, very honored to be here. Listen, I appreciate the invitation. I'm a lifelong Chicagoan. Attended public schools, CPS schools, and then after that went right to the Marines. And then I came back and then came back to Northeastern Illinois University on the Illinois Veterans Grant. And then I did some time in the Illinois Department of Transportation. I did some time with the Capital Development Board, which are both state agencies related around capital. And then I went ahead and started a business where I did some consulting. And then during the remap, an opportunity came up during the 2010 remap where there was a new board being drafted. And so I went ahead and put my hat in the ring. And as a result of the election was successful. So I have a career of just serving, whether it be my country, the state, or right now the constituents of the 36th Ward in the city of Chicago. Right now I have the privilege of serving as chairman of the Committee on Economic Capital and Technology Development. And as I mentioned, my background is more on the capital side, and on the technology side. I sat on this committee during my first term, and I always thought that we just didn't take advantage of the technology component in the committee. And I mentioned to my staff that when I became chairman, I wanted to make sure that I wanted to highlight technology as well, because of the fact that I just think that Chicago has a great opportunity to really grow its population, grow businesses, and then really compete with both coasts. When you take a look at the university system that surrounds Chicago, Chicago is just really set up in the region to be the ecosystem for technology. And I just want to make sure that we're being intentional on bringing more companies and starting new IT companies here in the city of Chicago. Just most recently, I was just elected to the National League of Cities Board of Directors. And for those that don't know, National League of City is the largest and most representative organization for cities and advocates for city priorities. And we do our advocacy in Washington, D.C. And technology has been in the forefront for a lot of the municipalities, especially as we take a look at what's going on around the country, especially centered around cybersecurity. As I mentioned, I'm Alderman of the 36th Ward. I have the pleasure of representing some communities. I have a little bit of Hermosa, Belmont-Cragen, Montclair, Dunning, and in Portage Park. I also have about 14 schools that I represent, and I have about 4 high schools. And of those high schools, what I've tried to do is put together some programs in there to really work with what it is that the high school has been identified as. So, for example, Prosser Vocational School I was able to put some building trades curriculum into the school, dealing with solar panels, dealing with carpentry, auto mechanic, those types of the old shop classes, bringing them back into the school, because we have to recognize that every student is not going to go to college, and when you take a look at these trades, I mean, they're very competitive as in wages, and just really a solid blue collar middle lifestyle. So we want to make sure that we're teaching those kids that might not go to college. At Steinmetz College Prep, I was able to bring a school, Lewis University, into Steinmetz, where some kids that have the ability to take some college courses that will, at some point when they graduate, be applicable to Lewis University. And then also put together a STEAM program there. And then North Grand took a look at some engineering, again, on the infrastructure side, the capital side, in introducing young men and women to the construction industry. So I've been the chair of the Economic Capital Technology Committee since 2019. And you can see kind of what our mission statement is. And besides dealing with economic capital and technology, another thing that we deal with is tax incentives, where we're trying to recruit companies to stay in Chicago and make sure that make sure they're staying in Chicago, then also recruit companies to Chicago via tax incentives. And we measure that by how many jobs they create and that type of stuff. Some of the things that I'm working on within this committee, real quick, free Wi-Fi. That's something that came up during the pandemic. As CPS had to go remote, we found ourselves in a position where there just wasn't enough free Wi-Fi for those kids, especially on the south and west sides of the city. So I've been working with Chicago Connected, and then part of a committee that I formed was a company that decided that they wanted to step up and provide some free Wi-Fi to parts of my ward that were not part of the Chicago Connected initial program. And so we went ahead and put together a pilot program led by Ignite Cities, Mesh++, which is located here in Chicago, as well as Verizon, using remote broadband and providing high quality free internet to students. So it's really a pretty cool thing to see it. And on top of that, it was installed relatively easy and pretty quick. So, and this was all done wireless with solar panels. So it's pretty cool to see this technology actually come to fruition. As I stated before, I worked in the state of Illinois. I worked with the Illinois Department of Transportation as well as the Capital Development Board. So my background is in the capital side. As I said before, it's economic capital and technology. So I quickly realized, hey, on the technology side, I need to make sure that I surround myself with experts within this area. And so I quickly formed a technology working group, and they really focused on two different issues. Number one was innovation and capital, transformation, economic impact, and city equity. And then I wanted to make sure that, listen, this is gonna be funny. As a result of what the mission was, modernization, innovation, revenue, efficiency, and diversity, it actually came out to an acronym spelling MIRED, right? Stuck in the mud. I just felt that our technology at the city of Chicago was just stuck in the mud. And this is no fault to the previous do-it commissioners. It was just I don't feel they were given the resources necessary to be innovative. And then you also take into account that when you're working with the city of Chicago and when we deliver services, as long as the services are being delivered, then we've in essence done our job. But the question that I've posed, especially during this budget crisis, how can we do it more efficiently? How can we do it where we're saving taxpayers money? And so, unfortunately, the do-it commissioners in the past didn't have those resources, and quite frankly, didn't have a champion in the city council to help them with technology. Their budgets were always very minimal, and they did a good job as long as the emails were being delivered, the cell phones were working, the iPads were working. So as long as there was no complaints from the departments, do-it was doing a good job. But so I thought we missed some big opportunities there. But that's why I want to make sure that we're supporting the new department, the Asset Information Services, because of the fact that we want to make sure that we're, challenging the commissioners and challenging the departments to be more efficient, and then really leveraging technology to deliver services more efficiently for the constituents of the city of Chicago. To that point, one of the things that I'm working on right now is a technology efficiency RFI. And what prompted that was the fact that if for those that are on the call, that we recently just passed the budget, and our budget deficit was about $1.2 billion. And we were able to identify some one-time savings. We had to identify some revenue. However, in 2022, during this pandemic, the fact that the recovery is not going to occur, experts are saying into the second or third quarter of 2021, we're looking at another deficit for the 2022 budget. And those one-time fixes are just not there. And we cannot go back to residents and companies for a property tax increase. So we're gonna have to find ways to get new revenue. And one of the things that's motivating this is that deficit. So the technology efficiency RFI that I've asked, or not actually asked, I've ordered the chief financial officer as well as the budget director and the comptroller is to put together an RFI where we're looking at the services that the city of Chicago delivers and how can we deliver them more efficiently and with a savings. And what prompted this was the fact that my working group, I had two companies come to me and say, hey, based on the information that's on the city's website, we think we can save you. One company said 250 million over 5 years. Another company said, we think we can save you anywhere between 25 to 50 a year in perpetuity. And those were really just conservative estimates. And so that prompted me to think, well, wait a minute, what about if we allowed technology companies to look at the services that we provide to the constituents, the service that we provide to businesses, and let them look under the hood and kind of find out how can we do this a lot more efficiently. Remember, as I stated before, we deliver services. So if it takes 20 steps to do, we've delivered them. But we're not a profit driven, and we don't do a lot of R&D. And so why wouldn't we take advantage of all the R&D and the efficiency that the private sector has, and those technologies that are applicable, apply them to city of Chicago, so that way we can deliver a cost savings to the residents of the city of Chicago. Again, trying to highlight Chicago as the tech hub of the Midwest, put together in collaboration with a couple of partners, dozens of economic development leaders, entrepreneurship support organizations, and community organizers from every state in the Midwest. There was approximately 14 states that were part of this summit, the 2-day summit, and we were really contemplating whether or not we were going to do it in 2020, given the pandemic. But I explained that, look, let's just get it off the ground in 21 when things begin to come to some type of normalcy, maybe in the third quarter. Then we'll go ahead and do it in person, but we'll have one under our belt and kind of see what worked and what didn't work. But as a result of that summit, what you saw was just a lot of states that were just energized and wanting to collaborate and recognizing that Chicago is the tech hub of the region, and it's important that we continue to take advantage of us being centrally located. Some short-term goals. The budget, as I mentioned, the budget problems in the city are not going anywhere. We need to find efficiencies in every department, and the best way in my opinion, is to utilize technology. We have some ongoing technology audit that's going to result in some type of findings this spring. And let me digress for a second. So this audit that's being performed right now, the initial solicitation occurred in late 2018. And then 2019 was, I guess, the review process. And then August of 2020 is when the actual technology firm, or the firm that was doing the technology audit, was actually selected. And during the discussions with the commissioner, I explained to him, I said, well, this solicitation occurred in 2018. All of 2019 was a review. Now they're finally on board in 2020. This is a perfect reason why we need to have some technology in place, because if you're taking a look at an audit to do a technology, and it takes almost 2 years to have to select that company and get them online, I'm sure that there's a quicker way to do this. So it was just perfect perfect example on why we need to incorporate technology into government, because we do not sell anything, we do not produce any widgets. And the way that City of Chicago is successful is when companies in the City of Chicago are successful. The more that they make, the more taxes they pay to the City of Chicago, to the state, et cetera. And then we have the ability to incorporate newer services and newer technologies. And so I think that we need to work hand in glove, the business sector as well as government, to make sure that we come through this pandemic and survive, and especially with the recovery. Cybersecurity is a big issue. As we saw what occurred in Atlanta, the City of Chicago is always looking at cybersecurity, making sure that that's front and center. We definitely don't want to put ourselves in a position where we're having to pay ransom for our data. And then we're also looking at increased access for all Chicagoans. As I stated before, the Chicago Connected, I think, is the first approach in having the City of Chicago have some free Wi-Fi. I think that when Wi-Fi is the internet, everyone uses the internet. And when you're applying for a job, the days of going into a company and signing and filling out a application, those days are over with. So everyone's on the internet. And so we need to make sure that every Chicagoan has internet access. And that's why I'm pushing for free Wi-Fi for the city of Chicago. And we're going to get there. It's going to take some time, but there's some technologies out there that we definitely want to make sure that we can take advantage of. That will make sure they're not cost prohibitive. Next slide. Next slide. I think, well, I have long-term goals. Okay, yeah, there you go. All right. And so we take a look at, as I stated, Chicago being the tech hub, we want to make sure that local Chicagoans are also participating in this sector, in the technology sector. And that's why I've put together some programs within CPS to make sure that these kids are taking advantage and preparing themselves for the new age. Then Discovery Partners Institute, that's going to be coming to the 78, a research hub led by University of Illinois is just a great win for Chicago. It just really solidifies the fact that we are that tech hub for the region. And I think that's going to be great for us. With the pandemic, we put together a recovery task force. And on that task force was the mayor, myself, President Preckwinkle from the Cook County, as well as President Cronin from DuPage, and realizing that, again, it's a regional approach, how to make sure that we're not focusing in our little silos, but taking a look at regionally how to make sure that all municipalities, not just Chicago, are successful in coming out and recovering from this pandemic. But with a focus on, the mayor and myself, with a focus on Chicago for our that's what we were focused on, was for Chicago, making sure that, again, we're putting out there the capital of the Midwest, and then making sure that we're equitable in investments in all neighborhoods. We've been very, very strategic in making sure that there's investments occurring in the south and west sides of the city, and especially with technology, we want to make sure that we're doing that as well. And my call to action to you, there's a bunch of experts on this call this evening. Every alderman that's I'm trying to think if there's any aldermen that are really tech experts, and I don't know of any. Everyone has their own expertise, but right now I can tell you that we're very familiar with it. We're dangerous enough to be a consultant, but we're definitely not an expert, and we need your help. I think that very few aldermen have your expertise, and so I would encourage you to engage your local alderman, offer advice and guidance, and what is it we should be implementing in the tech space, especially within Chicago. So I would ask you too, if you wouldn't mind following me on Facebook, or you can email me at ward36@cityofchicago.org. And again, I would love to speak to you if you have some ideas on how to continue making Chicago the tech hub of the nation. That's something that I'm interested in speaking to you with. If you have any ideas on how we should be doing things, definitely, I'm not ashamed to say that I don't have all the answers, and I make sure I always surround myself with experts from different categories. So that's, in a nutshell, what I've been up to as the chairman of Economic Capital and Technology, and I would be interested in hearing and answering any questions that you guys might have.
Great, thank you, Alderman. We definitely have some questions for folks who are on the live stream. Got some already from in the live chat, but feel free to start typing those questions now, and we'll get to them. I'll go ahead and ask the first one. So are there any cities or government entities you're looking to for inspiration in your IT modernization initiative? Are there organizations that have done this well already?
Yeah, and I think I think that we're looking at Silicon Valley. We're also taking a look at Boston, Austin, Texas, Dallas. We're trying to take a look at all these cities. But see, the way that I'm approaching this, Derek, is that with this request for information is I want to inform the tech and industry that we deliver services and we want to do it more efficiently. But the way that I want to pose the question is, I want to say, well, how would you do it? Instead of us saying, we have a problem, this is how we want you to solve it, right? Because really, we haven't really allowed the tech experts to be innovative and thinking of different ways to do it. As I stated before, we can deliver a service that may take 20 steps to do it. We've delivered the service, but quite frankly, it wasn't efficient, and it cost money to do it that way. Whereas if I say, to the tech space, hey, we want to make sure that we're routing garbage trucks in a way that's more efficient. How would you do it? They would come up with a solution, and so that's why we're looking at what different cities and states are doing, and a lot of companies are coming in saying, hey, we're doing this for this county, this state, this city, but quite frankly, I want to open it up to everybody and just say, this is the problem. How would you solve it?
Mm-hmm. And so just to clarify, an RFI would have more than an RFI would have
a request for information. And
would you have more than one person or more than one organization responding to that? And how would that work?
Yeah. So the way that I'm envisioning it, and our staff is working with the finance director as well as the budget director and the comptroller, is like breaking it up into buckets, right? So you have like permitting, you have a business component, you have a construction component, you have a streets and sanitation component, all these departments, and trying to figure out the services that we provide and incorporating technology into those departments, and then breaking them up into sectors, kind of find out which ones go together, and putting them out as a package, saying, this is what we're looking for a solution on. How would you solve this problem?
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So I would, to answer your question, I would see more than one company actually, submitting responses to these solicitations.
Okay, good. Yeah, because I would worry that one would just say, "We'll do it all."
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, I know.
It's a great way to get fleeced.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you want to ask the next question, Eric?
Yeah, sure. So next question we had was, what role you see for open source software playing in government IT specifically? And I might add on to that too. I think part of what Derek was getting at too is like whether or not there's like more cost effectiveness in many smaller projects versus like some big like umbrella vendors.
Yeah, so can you repeat the first part of that question?
Yeah, the first part of the question is what role you see for open source software playing in government IT.
Yeah, so, and that's the thing, what we want to give as little information as possible, because really we want the tech sector to come us with their ideas. So I'm not expecting like one of these huge conglomerates to come in and say, yeah, just as Derek mentioned, hey, we'll do everything for you. That's not what we're looking for, because we understand that they have a specialty. Maybe there's folks that deal with the cloud. Maybe they have that capacity to do it. Then another company that might do GIS type of solution. So we're trying to make it as vague as possible, because we really want the tech space, the tech industries to come back with solutions. And with this RFI, there'll be all types of questions. I mean, they may come back and say, well, what about, have you considered this? And then that's what we're looking for, is the innovation from the tech space.
Okay, I can take the next one. So in your opinion, does the city focus enough on recruiting and retaining in-house staff to work on technology projects? And how does that compare to the budget spent on third-party vendors and procurement contracts?
Yeah, well, we're going to find that out in the assessment for sure, because I can tell you, ever since I started talking about this RFI, I've had a bunch of companies that have contracts with the city saying, hey, you guys are paying for this service, but you guys are not using it. And I was like, well, how long have you had this contract? 10 years. So now you're just telling us about it now, right? For the past 9 years. So this is all going to come out, right? And I think that, as I stated, the former Do It department didn't have the bandwidth and didn't have the personnel. And IT has always been looked at not as the way that I look at IT as a utility, just like you need light, electricity, you need gas, you need technology, and you need IT, because there's no way that government or really any corporation could deal can do their business without technology. I mean, you need a cell phone, you need a computer, et cetera. So that IT in the past has always been looked at as a luxury item. Oh, you have a cell phone, you have this, you have that. Well, no, it's a necessity now for everyday service. So that's why I think during the 2019 budget, no, 2020 budget rather, we created a chief technology officer position. Unfortunately, it did not get filled. And that's something that I told them, I spoke to the mayor and the administration on. I'm like, that is like the quarterback for technology. It's coming out of your office, who gave you that authority, and you didn't put them in the game. And as a result, you didn't see any type of new technology ideas come out. We're hoping that in 2021, we're going to push the administration to hire that chief technology officer, because that's a crucial position. That person will have the ability to overlook other departments and other sister agencies that the city deals with. Because look, we have licenses with software companies, and so do the other sister agencies. So why wouldn't we use that buying power to lower the price for us and get a better price for the city of Chicago, as well as the sister agencies? So all that's going to come out in the assessment, but there just hasn't been an assessment because everybody's been in their individual silos with procurement.
Yeah, so along those lines, that actually leads kind of into our next question, which is, how has that Do It 2FM merger been going? I remember at the time there was an estimated, I think, around $1 million in cost savings and efficiencies. Is there any evidence that that's been realized yet?
Or here, even if you saved $10 million, I feel I supported the budget because it's hard to say, no, we don't want to save money. But the reality is, it saved, quote unquote, $1 million. But the compromise there was the creation of the chief technology officer that would have that ability to transcend all the departments. It didn't come to fruition. So in my opinion, we didn't save $1 million. Maybe we saved it in payroll, but we could have saved hundreds of millions of dollars if that chief technology officer had been in place and really challenging and taking a look at how the city of Chicago is delivering its services via technology. So I'm not a big fan I wasn't a big fan of the merger then, but we were going to save some money. But I think we're going to have to revisit that because of the fact that either the chief technology officer position has to come into fruition, or we need to go back to having a separate department. And I think not having a Do It type of department within the city of Chicago sends the wrong message to the technology space, that we're going to put you in with the maintenance of the buildings and the trucks and all these things. I think that's the wrong message. I think it should be a standalone, and that's something that we'll be taking a look at if the chief technology officer position is not filled in the next 6 months.
I can take next question from the live chat. Are there any areas of city government that you've identified as especially ready for or in need of change, where it looks like we'll see a lot of savings down the road?
Oh, here, I could give you one example right off the bat. So I'll give you two examples. And these were given to me by the two companies that are part of my working group. And they were just giving me some advice saying, look, we're not looking, obviously advertise the solicitation if you think it's a good idea. We're looking at your data, your public data, and there's a way to save some money. So right off the bat, CPD is required to maintain videos of their body cam videos. Well, we're paying hundreds of millions of dollars in storage, where we could have this in the cloud and on servers. So we have these physical servers that we're having to maintain them on, when we could utilize the cloud and save hundreds of millions. Another one is time and attendance. The Cook County is using technology under time and attendance, where it had using AI in order to take into account the accounting for time and attendance of employees. They saved, their initial investment was $7 million. Well, they saved $15 million in the first year, and that $7 million was the initial investment, and then there's a maintenance fee that's annually. But it was just the initial 7 million up front, but they realized their savings they realized that the investment is 6 months, and now that 15 million is in perpetuity, and their fee is maybe 500, 600,000 a year afterwards. So that's something that I think we're looking at, the time and attendance, and because it takes into account overtime, takes into account just making sure that sick days and all these other PTOs that are being accounted for correctly. But the company was saying, we think we can save you 25 to 50 million based off the public data that's provided by the city of Chicago. So here's two examples where one's 250 million over 5 years, the other one's 25 to 50 million a year. So over a 5-year period, we're talking about $500 million on two solutions. So as I stated before, imagine if we allowed the tech firms to look under the hood and kind of look at what we're doing. Why are you guys doing this way? This is back from 1980. Let's come into the 2000s.
Yeah. So one piece of feedback we've got in particular recently, and I can also add on to this personally as someone who years ago, I was an intern in an alderman's office, and we've had requests for help kind of come to Chi-Hacknight directly from Alderman Andre Vasquez in particular, kind of trying to take a look at this whole, having like a more integrated or shared approach to constituent services in particular. So I wonder if that's something that's on your radar, if you see ways that the city can help like unify all of the various different ways that each alderman's office like tries to handle constituent service requests, if there's any available funding for that outside of like the alderman's offices directly.
Well, here, Eric, you got to, when you become an alderman, there's no manual, so it's like you're on the fly. So you get more instructions on how to operate a microwave than it is to become an alderman in the city of Chicago, and how to take care of the business. So what we do is we're fortunate to have I'm fortunate to have talented staff, and we put together a system. But I'm constantly talking to my colleagues and trying to figure out ways that they're doing things. I mean, they may have a better mousetrap, and that's fine. But I agree with you. There needs to be a uniform process on how the city of Chicago does something, especially in the aldermanic office. Because a lot of times, I know that constituents are asked to call 311, but the reality is that in alderman's office, we get called for everything. Yep. I can tell you, and you know that firsthand. Yeah. I can tell you that I got called one time. And they were like, we need you to tell the president of the United States XYZ. I said, well, I could tweet him. I said, I do not have access to him. You know, that's Congress and that's the U.S. senator. And so but we're the front line of defense, and we're the first person that touches the constituent. And the way that I deliver services for my constituents, and my staff knows this, is when someone calls the alderman's office or any elected official's office for that matter, they have a problem and they want to try to get it resolved. So I've explained to my staff is that we're customer service.
Right.
When that constituent calls us, they have a problem. 99% of the time there's a problem. 1% they might say, hey, you're doing a good job and you know, happy birthday or something. But the other 99% there's a problem. No problem. That's what we get paid to do. We want to make sure that we're addressing their concerns, that when we're done with our call or done with our interaction, that we've pointed them in the right direction or have addressed their concerns. And that's why it's important that we have some type of uniform approach to this, so that way constituents are not feeling frustrated in dealing with government. I've heard time and time again, oh, I don't want to go downtown because it's going to take this long. And you have people, bureaucrats that are just like, no, you have the wrong form. You got to go down to the 5th floor and the 8th floor. And it's just a hassle. So how do we remind the bureaucrats that work in city government that the constituents, the taxpayers, that we work for them, and that we want to make sure that we're delivering on the services that we're supposed to provide, but really making sure they have a good interaction and a good customer service with their local officials.
I can take the next question. This is another one from the live chat. So someone asks, what constraints would you place on the tech space? And they say that tech isn't always ethical. So I guess I'd maybe add to that. Is there some sort of ethical framework that you can't just say, give us anything, right? You have there's got to be guardrails, right? So what do you have some of that you could share?
Yes, so that I would not, because once the RFI is received and information is put together, and there's solicitation that's put there,
Sure.
then we'll allow the procurement experts to kind of take a look at what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. But definitely, we want to make sure that the services that we at some point, or the companies that we contract with are obviously ethical, and making sure that the services are what the constituents are paying for.
Want to take the next one, Eric?
Yeah. So you had mentioned earlier the sort of having a Chicago-run broadband network. One viewer was wondering what your fellow aldermen's views are towards that sort of thing.
Repeat the first part, Eric. I'm sorry.
Yeah, basically, earlier you were talking about having broadband internet access for people in Chicago, and I just wonder, like, the question is kind of, amongst the city council, like, what sort of support you see for or against that sort of thing.
Well, I think it's right now it's we're trying to form it and trying to figure out a way to do it. I would anticipate that this would be a battle. However, as I stated, I mean, we have to provide free Wi-Fi. Everyone's on the internet, and we have to have some reliable internet access for everyone in the city of Chicago. Especially, like as I stated, you can't apply for a job without going on the internet or online. Everything's in internet. On the broadband, I don't. There's some money set aside in the capital bill to do broadband. We're looking, as we make capital investments in the city of Chicago, making sure that we're putting the infrastructure in place for broadband as well.
And maybe I might just add on to that too. You said you anticipated it be a battle. I wonder, for people maybe who aren't as familiar with the political context, if you could explain.
So when you talk about free stuff, there may be someone that's charging for a service, and so you would anticipate that they may be opposed to that. But I think that we have to make sure that every constituent in the city of Chicago that we remove that barrier of accessibility to the internet. I mean, as I stated before, it's not a luxury. This is a utility, and we need to make sure that people have access to this.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take the next one. That's actually kind of a nice segue into it. How are you engaging Chicago residents on their experiences with Chicago technology? How are you engaging City of Chicago and sister agency employees for their experiences and recommendations? Do either of these groups have a way to contribute as a part of the RFI or other feedback mechanism?
I think that's a good question, because I haven't thought about strike that. It's not that I haven't thought about it, but I'm trying to figure out how to incorporate the government side of and the folks that actually have to use the technology. I think that'll all be flushed out as we get once the RFI is completed and we begin to take a look at solutions. I think it would be imperative that as these RFIs are broken up into sectors, that those departments that will at some point have to deal with the technology have some input in making sure that they're incorporating and capturing the day-to-day stuff that they have to deal with. But I also want to caution that when we deliver services, as I stated before, it could take 20 steps. What I want to do is avoid that. I want to make it as efficient as possible. And that's where I think the private sector, because they're profit driven, are doing it in a way where they're doing it more efficiently because they have to respond to their shareholders. I'm looking at it more like we need to make sure that we're delivering the services at the cheapest price, or I should say more efficiently, because we have to deal to to our shareholders, which are the constituents, which ultimately pay for government. So we just want to make sure that we're listening to the departments, but also want to make sure that we're changing and we're taking a look at delivering the service. Because we've been doing it's been done that way for forever, and it just gets taught. And I think we need to have a new culture there.
Mm-hmm. That does remind me, there's an organization at the federal level called AT&T. Have you heard of them before?
I have not.
They actually follow a consulting model, but they're a federal workers. And
Nice.
So they actually consult with agencies at the federal level to on their technology projects. And so they can act as this expert in the room, but
Yeah.
that also does not have a conflict of interest in that
Right.
they don't want to win the business. They're there as employees, and they want to make sure that the government's getting the best deal. So having some organization like that, I think they have in the past done local level work. They're obviously a federal agency, but I know they've done work in the state and local levels as well. So that might be a resource to
Interesting.
look
Yeah.
into.
Yeah, Derek, if you could send that to us, I'd be interested in looking at that. Have my staff look at that.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do
Cool.
that.
Thank you.
Along those lines, I guess another question from the audience. You had mentioned sort of opening up RFIs to the larger tech industry, and we had one person who's wondering in particular if there's a plan for focusing on smaller tech businesses instead of industries.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. And so remember, the acronym that we came up with, MIRED, stuck in the mud, was modernization, innovation, revenue, efficiency, and diversity. So I want to make sure that when we talk about diversity, we're also talking about local Chicago firms as well. And yeah, so that's for anyone who knows me. I'm front and center about making sure that small businesses have an opportunity to procure with the city of Chicago. I did that with the Department of Transportation. I did that at a trade industry, a construction trade industry, where I advocated and lobbied for the trade association in Springfield and Washington, D.C. And then I brought that approach to the Capital Development Board, which is another state agency. And I've done that as an alderman, making sure that small minority women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses are participating on these type of opportunities.
Great. I think I have another question here. I think we kind of talked about this topic already, but it's just a follow-on around the sort of municipal broadband or the local broadband work that we talked about earlier. There has been talk about, in some other cities, there do exist municipal-run broadband networks. I think there's even a network run by in the South Suburban Mayors and Managers Association. And so I know there's been various plans floated throughout the county and the city over the years. Is that something that's potentially on the table still, or is that something that your fellow aldermen have discussed?
No, that's something that's definitely on the table. What we want to do is take a look at that. Maybe there's a revenue opportunity for us as well. So here, when you're facing a 1.3 billion deficit in 2022, everything is on the table.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important that we take a look at every type of solution, every type of idea, vet it out,
Mm-hmm.
and see what actually could come to fruition. I would also state that prior to the pandemic, I was so excited because this was about January, February of 2020, and I went and spoke to the mayor. And as with this working group, we were coming up with some types of ideas on ways to save money and actually create revenue. So I told the mayor, I said, well, Mayor, look, if for example, I'm able to identify savings from a solution, I want to be able to split that savings and actually have the city of Chicago create a venture fund where we're taking a look at investing in some startups ourselves. Boston is doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, let's take a look at that. And then all of a sudden the wheels fell off in 2020. So that's something that I hope to try to capture in maybe another year or two. But that's something that and the reason why what prompted me on that was I met a company, a young lady, she had a company, and she got 95% of her funding from San Francisco. Yet the venture fund allowed her to keep her business here in Chicago. So had they not done that, we would have lost a company to San Francisco. And it was a great idea because you had this company that was proposing, spend 95%. She had the other 5% from a venture capital firm in Chicago, but the VCs here are so conservative. And so we've got to figure a way where we can, as a municipality, in order to help grow the economy and also grow our population and workforce, taking a look at it, trying to be creative. And I thought, looking at what Boston did, I thought that was a great opportunity for Chicago.
I've heard of a similar initiative, I think in Sacramento,
Okay,
well,
yeah.
where the actual government had grants. And in fact, it's not even that unprecedented here in Chicago. There's the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, which is targeted at very specific brick and mortar businesses.
Correct.
But it's the same idea, right?
Right. It's just not on this one's going to be specifically for tech, is what I was thinking.
Right, absolutely. Well, we have a couple minutes left. Did you have other questions, Eric? I have a couple more I could get to, unless you got one.
There's so many things I could think of. We're just
Here, Eric. So just so you know, if you think about something that you want, you have our contact information. Let us know. I mean, you guys are the experts. This is not my expertise. I'm familiar with it. I said I'm dangerous enough to be a consultant, but really, you guys are the experts.
Unfortunately, I too am a consultant, but it looks like we did have another question from the chat. Someone was asking what ways the tech sector could help the city of Chicago save money by avoiding or addressing civil rights abuses quickly.
Oh man, I would have to, I'd have to probably ask him or her to elaborate on that question. Are we talking about civil rights? Are we talking about specifically the police, or? Not sure.
Well,
There's been a delay in the chat, but let's go ahead and assume yes.
That's probably a great place to start.
So I think that obviously we've started 2 or 3 years ago, I think, the body cams to try to make sure that we're capturing both sides, right? Because we had the public that had recording devices, but the police didn't have recording devices. So I think that's changed the game a little bit, because if you're constantly thinking about you're being videoed, that you're going to act accordingly. And I would say that 99.999% of our first responders act accordingly. So with the that's a good question on how tech can help on that. If they have some ideas on it, I'd be more than happy to listen to that. I mean, because I haven't really looked at tech in that space, but that is a important factor, because we spend a ton of money on lawsuits, and so if there's a way that tech could come in and save us some money on this, I'm all ears.
Well, I could think in particular, at least thinking back to a presentation that the Invisible Institute did here a couple years ago, where they did some data analysis on complaint data from police, and they were able to find this sort of, speaking really roughly, but there tends to kind of be the 80-20 rule, where there are certain officers who tend to produce drastically more complaints than others, and among those, those have led to those settlements for multi-million dollars. So I think that is a sort of thing. Again, I can't speak to the original person, but at least my perspective on this in particular is similar to how, obviously there's lots of different complexities. So I don't mean to speak too broadly, but, the sort of situation where in the private sector, if someone was creating that much potential liability, they would find it a little bit sooner than after $1 million settlement is perhaps.
I mean, if there's some ideas out there, again, I'm more than happy to hear them, and they can send them to us. We'll be more than happy to take a look at it. Again, I don't have all the answers, but and that's why I encourage my constituents, as well as any Chicagoan, to put forth any type of information that we can utilize.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we'll share the contact information that you shared with us as well to our members, so folks can reach out to you directly. But I think we are at about time. So
Okay.
I think we do have to wrap things up here, but just want to say thank you, Alderman. This has been a really helpful conversation. I appreciate your time and your openness to answering all of our questions.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the opportunity to, from an alderman's perspective, to talk about what we do in the committee. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and I think that's the last thing, folks. So we'll share the link to the post Zoom live stream call in the chat in just a moment here. But I think the last thing to do is to say, go forth and
Go
hack.
forth and hack.
All right. Thanks, folks.